Welcome to the Big World Made Small podcast for the adventure traveler. I'm thrilled you're here. My name is Jason Elkins, and in addition to being your host, I'm also a former U.S. Army paratrooper, third-generation commercial hot air balloon pilot, paramotor pilot, ex-Montana fly fishing guide, advanced open water scuba diver, and a full-time nomad that's visited more than 30 countries on 6 continents. As a seasoned adventure travel expert with a passion for creating and sharing meaningful experiences, I'm on a quest to impact the lives of adventure travelers, the tour operators they rely on, and the communities that host them. Every week, I bring you exclusive interviews with fascinating adventure tourism experts who have agreed to share their personal stories, favorite destinations, and some invaluable travel insights they've picked up along the way. We'll enjoy a casual conversation, create some connections, and likely share some laughs. It's my hope that by the end of each episode, this big world will feel just a bit smaller. Let's get started, shall we? Okay, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Big World Made Small Adventure Travel Podcast. So happy to have all of you here, but super excited to have Vaibhav Kala here with us today. He's from Aquaterra in India, and he's going to share a little bit about kind of his life, his story, his business, his country, his home, all that good stuff, all in an attempt to help make the big world feel just a little bit smaller. So Vaibhav, so happy to have you here.
Grateful, Jason. Happy to chat. Look forward to this.
Yeah, we had a conversation here, probably a week or two ago, and it was just really intriguing. You operate in a place that I'm not that familiar with. Actually, a lot of the interviews I've been doing lately are places that I'm not that familiar with, which is no accident because I'm also wanting to learn more about these places and the world and the people in it. So super excited to chat with you. The Himalayas are an area that have captured the imagination of many, many people. Whether they've been there or not. So happy to have you here. And I want to kind of start with who you are as a person. How did you get it? The questions you hear when you're sitting around the campfire with a bunch of guests or at the lodge, it's that, how did you get into this? What was going on that got you into tourism?
Right. So my dad was in the forces, and we used to get transferred every year or two into small cantonments, big wide open spaces, obstacle courses, horse riding, squash, swimming, hiking. So it was always something that I enjoyed a lot. And then through school and college, the hiking, the structured hiking and climbing started. We had a very active hiking club in college in Delhi University, and we used to go climbing, big mountain climbing, 6,000 meters or. I realized this is what really drives me, and I trained as a river guide. I had the mountain experience, but river running was just about starting in the country. And by fall of 1992, I was guiding mountain and river trips. And it was young and foolish, an idea probably ahead of its time. It could have gone horribly wrong. There was no market in the country, but yeah, I mean, here we are, 32 years later.
Were your parents supportive? Because that's something that comes up quite often. Is I know parents, they come from maybe the structure of a military, career or that type of thing. And the idea of, you're going to go be a what? You're going to be a river rafting guide? What is that? How supportive were they?
So exactly, they were worried, but they put on a brave front, and they were intrigued. What is this that you're doing? I mean, putting people on a rubber boat and running them down the Ganges. So they didn't get it, but I have to say they did not put any pressure at all. They were supportive. Yes.
Okay, very cool. Is that typical of Indian parents being supportive when their son wants to go off and do something totally different?
No, this was really random. I mean, what I was doing was, like I said, it could have gone horribly wrong. I mean, there was just no market in India then. It was only expats and trickle of inbound travelers, and I'm really so most Indian parents would have certainly objected to this thought, or passed it off as a passing sort of illusion.
He'll get over it, give me a year or two, and
absolutely
go back to school and be a doctor, a lawyer, or something respectable.
Yes.
Get a real job.
Get a real job. Yes.
Now, in hindsight, because I've had a conversation with you, I've seen your bio. I'm aware of some of the stuff you've been doing. So it's easy for me right now at this time in 2023 to look at it and say, man, you got in it at just the right time. You were like, you just, it was like perfect, meant to be. It might not have felt like that at the time, but would you agree that you kind of just fell into it at the right time?
Yes, to be fair, in hindsight, with the benefit of that, I think it was the right place, right time, because the industry did grow there. You had that first mover advantage. A lot of things were unexplored. So I think that the potential for doing new things was way greater than it is now. And yeah, the industry was not congested at all. And I think we did get the benefit of first mover advantage. And yeah, it would have been far tougher if I was born maybe 25 years later and tried to do this. So I think, yeah, it was a struggle for sure because of no market, etc. But yeah, I think it was the right time.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Once there is a big market, then you're kind of late to the game.
Yeah.
And they talk about people being experts after they've done 10,000 hours of something, like the Bill Gates and Steve Jobs and those guys. They've looked at it and said, well, if those guys would have been born 2 years later, they would not. Microsoft would not be what it is. Apple would not be what it is. So it's pretty fascinating. So and I'm also curious because, so there's mountain climbing, there's the mountain part, and then there's the rafting or the river descents. Is that just a natural fit, or is that a little different? Help me kind of understand why those two things and how do those work together.
Yeah, so I think there is an overlap of customers. I think we've had a lot of people intrigued by running rivers multi-day. So our specialty is both multi-day hikes, multi-day river trips. And I think we were lucky to expose our trekking guests into a different kind of adventure on rivers. And because it's challenging, there is certainly adrenaline, and that feeling of, exploration because there's just a tight unit, unlike a trek where there'll be like a ton of people, horses and porters and guides. So it's and other groups. So river running really can get you out into complete wilderness, and with nobody but just the boats that you're on. So I think it does appeal, to that completely exploratory desire or aspiration to go into someplace really wild. It need not be big water. It could be like a wilderness trip. But the fact that you're self-contained and traveling solo as a group, as a unit, so I think there was a fair bit of overlap. Hikers generally are the most serious clientele. They like to spend that 7-8 hours with themselves, walking, challenging themselves. River runners are a little more relaxed, but I think there is certainly an overlap, and also it I think appeals to a larger demography. You can run a wider set of guests because ability wise, I think it's more conducive for a wider range of abilities, and then of course we have the third bit, the hospitality. We have an activity lodge and a couple of camps that we run. So I think it's a good mix, or rather than being just a single activity specialist. So right. We are a bit of a hybrid company that can move guests between lodge to river running to trekking. So it I think provides for a good circulation of experiences for our guests.
Sure. And I'm curious because, I have a lot of conversations with folks that they're really passionate about one particular part of their business. So for example, I'll use the example of Ecuador. An outfitter here might be super passionate about the Amazon, which is a small part of Ecuador. It's not the majority of their clients do not go to the Amazon, but the majority of clients are going maybe to the Galapagos or Quito or something like that. And I've heard people say, well, this is what I'm really passionate about, but this is the part that pays the bills. Mm-hmm. And sometimes people are just like, they're just passionate, excited about all of it. So I'm going to just ask you if you're willing to share, do you have strong emotional feelings about river, running rivers, floating rivers, mountain climbing, anything else, or is it just kind of the same for you?
So, like I said, I was doing a lot of hiking and climbing to school and college. And when I started river guiding, it just seemed like there was a lot to be explored, even in terms of, commercial river running. And we opened a lot of big river trips in the Himalayas. So I think at that stage of life, in my 20s and 30s, it was very exciting, going into places which hadn't been opened, which hadn't been run for a while. So that really spurred me on, and we opened a lot of new trips through my 30s. And then I think now I quite enjoy the hiking because I've done that whole adrenaline charged exercise, and the trips are in place, and they go sometimes, lots of times without me. And I enjoy the hikes, the quiet, the walking with myself for those 6 to 8 hours. Conversations without the stress of a big class 4 rapid. And I still ride a lot of our big trips, but I think I've started enjoying hiking more because it just gives me that time with myself on the trail, which is never possible on a river trip.
Yeah, because you're literally 2 feet from everybody in the boat, right?
Yes, exactly.
Or,
So I think that it's changed.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I get that completely. What do you think? I mean, do you get a lot of where do your typical clients come from? What kind of mix are you seeing?
So we see
Both for the hiking and for the river.
So the hiking, it's mostly people in their 40s, 50s, 60s, seasoned sort of guests. The river running is anything from 30s, the multi days again 30s onwards to the 60s. A large part of our guests are free individual travelers. Signing up on our dated departures. They could be from the US, Canada, the UK, Europe, mainly. South Asia, we're trying to develop that market because it's so close to us, and it's a growing market in South Asia. It's sitting on 750 million people between 15 and 24. So over the next 10 years, this part of the world is going to see a lot of people who enjoy this. And
right, yeah, absolutely. And where do you see so some things that I'm sure you've seen over the years when you first got into this, there weren't really people doing, or very few people doing what you're doing. So you've seen a lot of changes over the years. Some of them, I'm sure, for the positive, and some of them you kind of maybe just roll your eyes about, or there's concerns about, just things, like the environment, over tourism. So what are a few things that you've kind of seen change over the years that maybe someone that hasn't been in it, like you have, wouldn't even guess that it's happened?
Yes, so I think we saw the transition, Jason, from having to drive 140 kilometers to make a single phone call, and there being no air connectivity in this part of the world, to having seen those two revolutions, the technology revolution and the aviation revolution, come into India and made travel became a lot easier. It was very, very difficult. Infrastructure became better. We've seen the roads get better, expressways come in. This whole economic abilities have changed. More people have cars, are willing to travel, drive out. Remoter parts of the country are better connected now. So it's made business a lot easier. It's made operations better, more efficient. The troubling part of it is the industry has grown to an extent where now we need to think about how the very USP that draws people into the Indian Himalaya, that needs to be protected. So that is the worrying part, and so I do work with industry to interface with government to help address these issues, because you can't destroy that USP because of over tourism. Because then you're just killing the whole product. So that is, I think, top of mind. Rising accident rates are worrying. We're dealing with the government of India to set up model laws for adventure tourism which are not existent. Licensing and registering of operations. So those things are on the move. So I think that might get a lot better over the next year or two. And yeah, because the Indian Himalayas is massive, it's 3,000 kilometers, more than 72% of the entire Himalayas lie in India, but that connection is not there because it's never been projected in that manner. I mean, most people connect with India, with the Taj Mahal or the forts and palaces and snake charmers. So that perception has to change soon.
Yeah. Well, I wonder because you talked about how it's gotten logistically easier to do business, and then you mentioned things like safety and accidents. Because presumably, if it's easier for you to get some clients online, take them out and put them into a river in a boat with a guide, it's also easier for somebody that maybe hasn't spent 20, 30 years doing it. And they've just like, hey, I bought a boat. I got a guy who says he knows how to row. So there we go. It's so that I can see where that would be the case. And is that the hope then with more regulation, more government involvement, is to try and improve the training and licensing and stuff like that? Is that kind of what you were saying, right?
Yes, absolutely. We've been drumming this with the government for the last 2 to 3 years, and there's been finally a reaction. India set up a national board for adventure tourism, and they're discussing standards, and the model law draft is already through. So anyone who wants to operate in India will need to be registered, licensed, and will be subject of the law that will be passed hopefully sooner than later.
Was there something, because oftentimes when a government all of a sudden expresses an interest in increasing safety in something tourism related or aviation related or any of those things, oftentimes it's because something happened that precipitated that. Or are there scenarios where those in the industry know that something needs to be done, and unfortunately something bad has to happen in order for the the word to get out? Oh my gosh, like a whole raft full of foreign tourists goes missing or something horrible. So was there anything that precipitated that, or was it just the constant work of folks like yourself to get them to
So I think it was a combination. There was no single event, but there were multiple events which could have been avoided. Accidents that could have been avoided, should have been avoided. Plus industry efforts, in light, because we saw it as a threat. Rising accident rates and unregistered licenses. So we've been talking about this, and alongside these events have been happening, which supported our whole core.
Hi, Paul. I've lost you. Can you hear me?
Jason, are you there?
Okay, I can hear you now. So I lost you there for just a second. So I made a noise, and we'll go back and I'll edit that out later. But yeah, we were just kind of talking about how, let me just start. We'll just start here.
Okay.
So you were explaining how, the government, the operators and stuff were working together. Maybe a few things kind of happened along the way to kind of highlight the need for this, these regulation changes and stuff like that, right? All right, we got all that worked out. Can you hear me okay?
I'm sorry, Jason. I think I dropped off. Would you be able to edit it? Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, I can. I don't know why I dropped off.
Okay, it sounds good right now. Yep. So
you want me to go back and?
Yeah, we'll just try and pick it up somehow, and I'll figure out how to edit it together, or I'll just say we had a glitch.
Okay.
So, Bob, you were saying, I think we lost the connection. We talk about how amazing technology is, and sometimes it's sometimes there's reality there. So anyway, you were discussing just the need for regulations changes to make the sport and the industry safer there in the Himalayas. And was there anything you wanted to add to that?
No, so I think it's finally been established that you for a good reputation as a destination for adventure tourism, and the government is very, very keen that gets established globally. You need to have operators that are registered, licensed, and a very low accident record. You can never eliminate it completely, but you need to keep it as low down with all good practices and standards in place. So that bit has finally been settled. So it's meant that a lot of education has had to be imparted about the importance of all this. But I think we are there. We are in a good place, and it's just a matter of time with the implementation of those standards and the draft laws, and we should be in a far better place for the future.
Great. Well, you've been so close to that. You know more about that stuff than the average person for sure. So anybody listening to this, what's the best advice you can give to them when it comes to, they're getting ready to go somewhere, they're looking for an operator. They don't have a clue if the government there has rules, regulations. Most people are, basing decisions on what they see on maybe TripAdvisor, something like that. If a website says we're licensed and fully insured, okay, fine, maybe. But if it doesn't say that, most people don't notice it either. So what's your advice to people that are thinking about going on a trip, especially something like, hiking in the mountains, floating down rivers, wingsuiting in Switzerland, whatever it is they're doing? What's your advice?
So I've seen mature travelers approach a decision, an operator decision based on not what is being provided, but by the pedigree of somebody who will get you out when the chips are down. That's really what you need in an operator. Will this person, this company, get me out? No holds barred, no cost spared. If something happens to me, if I need to get out of this place, if I'm injured, if I'm very sick, will they still take care of me? And I think that decision is very critical, and I think people want to speak to the people who will be taking them down. So speak to your guide, speak to the outfit, ask the right questions, and that I think is really important. Making decisions on who to go with. Because it's not really cost-based pricing. You've got to look at what value you're getting, and often, companies that have the experience do have value-based pricing. They have better gear, they have better backups, they have better logistics, they have more experienced staff. So you're getting better cooked food, more hygienically prepared food, to better toilet stations, to more experienced guides who are current, on their wilderness first aid. They know the trails, they know how to get you out if you're in trouble. They can figure out weather patterns. They can tell if it's safe to go on or to retreat. So that often makes the difference between a trip that can go south or not.
No, that it's a really good point, because one of the things with technology, it's become so easy to book, reserve so many different things that it comes down to, if you've got an app on your phone and you want to book a hotel room, how many people just kind of like, okay, it's 3 stars and I'm going to take the cheapest one that's 3 stars. It's so price driven. If you're booking flights, it's the cheapest one. People kind of have an idea that tourism and travel is a commodity and it's all the same. If I'm going to go on a cruise, I'm going to find the cheapest cruise. If I'm going to go stay at a hotel, I'm going to find the cheapest hotel, that as long as they have decent reviews. But when they're starting to look at something that's outside of their familiarity, you got to be careful, because you can't compare, a Himalayan trip with someone like yourself to another Himalaya trip just based on price. There's so many more variables. I had a similar experience. I had a hot air balloon ride business, and very few people ever go on a hot air balloon ride more than once. It's a once in a lifetime thing. So they've never been on a balloon, and they're in an area, they see balloons in the sky, they go online and they say, oh, well, okay, how much is a balloon flight? Well, there's some operators are selling a balloon flight for $100, and other operators are selling a balloon flight, it's a private charter, for $900. And it's like, well, I've never been on a balloon flight, but I booked a flight to get to Phoenix, so I know how to book flights. I always pick the cheapest flight, and then they go have an experience, and they don't even know. It's they don't know. So I think it is important, if you're booking something that you really aren't that familiar with, don't just assume that it's like booking a hotel or booking flights. So that's
exactly. You'd never know. You'd never know till if you're going with somebody, you think that you benchmark it as that is the standard experience, and you might never return again if you had a bad one. And so I think you won't even know, and settling guest expectations now, because the sort of guests that used to come, say, in the 90s or the early 2000s was very different from guests who travel now, because those 3 decades have churned out an entirely new generation of adventure travelers who are maybe not as hardy, as they're not as experienced, they haven't done that much, but social media has driven that aspiration, and
the Instagram tourist.
Yeah. So there's a lot to do. I mean, we have to work harder to settle expectations, to establish them, and so we're doing a lot of Zoom calls just to sort that out, so that there's no trouble on the trail or the river, because they're being told everything, every aspect of it is covered. So one didn't need to do that, say, 20 years ago, because everybody who would come then were hardy travelers. They knew, I've got to have 3 liters of water by 3 p.m., or I will not be able to do this. I have to put on sunscreen, or I'm going to get burnt. They knew what to carry, how to carry it, how to organize themselves. That is not true for a lot of guests now, who are doing their first few forays into big wilderness zones. They want to do it. They have the time. They have the money. But they haven't done it before. So it's become more important to set expectations prior.
Right. I heard you say you do Zoom calls. So like if you have a group coming together, will you all jump into a Zoom call and at some point before they come? That's wonderful.
So we're doing that a lot, and it helps them, prepare better. And that means less trouble for the guides on the trip, because everything's been communicated, how to carry, what to expect. And so, yeah, that's really helped us.
That is, it's very cool. Do you, people that don't work in the business, maybe they travel and they go visit places, they don't realize how much is involved. This, we talked about logistics, and you said it's gotten easier, but I know that doesn't mean it's easy. And sometimes, when people show up in camp and they've got a tent and they've got food, and it's like, wow, this is magic. What would you like your clients to know? Not like, we work so hard for you, you guys don't appreciate it, but like, do you have a story or two, or like something that you'd want to share with them so they can kind of maybe just fully appreciate how much work goes into keeping them safe and sharing a good experience with them? And again, I know you're not complaining about it because you're passionate about it, but what is it you think people don't realize is going on behind the scenes sometimes?
So I think I'll give an anecdotal experience. Last year, I was leading a trip in Kashmir, and it was a group of CEOs. It was a high-powered trip and a lovely area. And of course, there was an event that happened. One of them fell and dislocated their elbow, and we were lucky that we managed to set it right back and evacuate him the next day. He was on a flight and got complete care. But what sunk in then over the rest of that event was a catalyst to the rest of them realizing that what went behind to do it, the experience of guides who could put that elbow back, a team that could evacuate, which meant lessening the crew on ground, because 2 guides had to go down and make sure that it was on a flight, and the trip continued, as per schedule. So that built-in backup, the care that goes into, even providing clean drinking water, what kind of filtration systems do you have proper first aid? A lot of our remote trips go with AEDs and stretchers, because things happen in the mountains. If you have to be prepared. And so I think a lot of the rest of the trip was that realization of, then I started noticing everything, how laborious, it is. The crew's going ahead, they pack up camp, they race ahead of you, they set up camp, they've got the kitchen going, the tea's on the table. So the little things, I think, started to sink in, about how operations are hard and laborious. It's everything has to be done. There's no mechanization on an adventure travel trip. Everything is done by guides and crew on it.
And I get it. It can be, when you've got somebody that's there and they worked their butt off to get there, to get the resources, the time off, whatever, to go there, and they're in they're in, I'm going to say vacation mode. And sometimes when you're in vacation mode, you think everybody around you is in vacation mode. And you're just having these great conversation with the guides, and the guides, I'm sure, enjoy the conversations. But then, like, after you have that last sip of whiskey and last puff on your cigar and crawl off to your tent at the end of the night, they still have to like clean stuff, get stuff ready for the next day. And I suspect that a lot of the clients that you've had, if they've worked as guides before, or if you're working with industry folks, come and it's like I'm always blown away. It's the first thing I notice when I go on a trip with an operator is just like I'm looking at the logistics because I know how much of a challenge it can be. But it sure feels great when it's done. And actually, you kind of don't want the clients to know how much work is involved in a sense, right? You kind of like, yeah, you don't want them to be, focused on how hard you're working.
Exactly.
So anyway, very, very cool. So what do you guys have? What's exciting on the horizon? I know you're working on a project that you've done for a while. It's kind of a competitive thing that brings groups and families together. We discussed it briefly the last time we spoke, and if I recall right, it's coming up here fairly soon. You want to tell us a little bit about that or anything else that's exciting that's coming up?
Yeah, sure. So we started the Himalayan Adventure Challenge in 2013. There was a massive flood in Kedarnath, one of the shrines up on the valley of the Ganges, and for 6 months nobody was traveling to the hills because all social media and television showed were buildings falling, temples going into rivers, etc. And so we set up this challenge that year just to make it a fun family event. It had 3 different categories. One is the Zealot, which is a mountain bike, a hike, and paddle race. And then there's an open category, which is a 30-kilometer, 16K hike and 14K raft race. And then a family challenge, which is 5K on the river and 5K dash back. So that got a really good response, and we've run it ever since. Every year, it happens in the 3rd week of December. We plan to take it across different valleys in time, and we're starting to do one with schools as well. We have one coming up in 3 weeks. So hopefully that format, it's a great introduction to people. It's a safe, cocooned experience. Over a weekend where you can do it with your partner, your spouse, your kids, because there are 3 different categories. So we get like, a family, and the dad or the mom will probably be doing the Zealot, the longest one, and someone doing the open, and they join their kids to do the family challenge. So it's very festive. And I think it's a great force multiplier for us. People get their first sniff at outdoor adventure, and then we're like, hey, but we've got so much more happening. So yeah, it drives people to do things. I think we're developing adventure travelers for the future.
No, absolutely. And tour operators, probably. I'm envisioning, and maybe you've got stories like that. I'm envisioning, a young person coming with their family to do something like that. And, next year they're coming back again. And then eventually they're coming back as interns or volunteers or whatever. And then a few years later, they're maybe one of your guides. Do you have some stories of people that started out as clients that then turned into team members, or anything like that?
Yeah, so we have an example right here. We have Tanya Tully, who's running our lodge at Atali. And she, I remember about 20 years ago, had done a Kali trip with us, and then a Zanskar later. And then we went in touch. She was traveling, and we had an opening at our activity lodge where we have a 12-hour activity schedule. It's very exciting. And she's now the hostess here. She's come back. Yes, so that's quite cool.
That is so cool to see that. I remember experiences with that in Montana. People come and go fishing with us as a fly fishing guide, come fishing with us. And then, a couple of summers later, 2-3 years later, they're working in the shop, or they talk their parents into buying them a drift boat, and they're out on the river learning. And it's just great to see that kind of can continue on through through generations.
It's worked the other way as well. We've had interns, who worked with us, and they've gone and someone's become a pilot and they've come back on a hike years later. So some of
Oh,
our
yeah.
trainees, so that's really
They
exciting.
bring their families and that type
Yeah,
of thing. Yeah,
we've seen that as well. So yeah, it's great to have that happen.
that is super cool. What would you say? What's your kind of, I don't know, philosophy, or what are your feelings about tourism in general? What makes it special for you? I mean, I know it's a business. You've given back to the community. You've seen a lot of things happen, but what is really the draw for you underneath all that?
I think supporting local populations, just giving back to the areas, like 90%, 95% of our work is, everything goes back into the areas we operate. Large part of that tourism dollar can actually go back into the remote areas that we operate in, and that's such a powerful thing. I mean, adventure tourism can be, such a change maker to say. And our team, we're a largest team, 70-75 people. 99% is from the Indian Himalaya, and just supporting that is itself, yeah, I'm very very happy. It makes me happy, makes me proud that our organization does that. And we hire local, we buy local, we make sure everything goes back to people from the areas that we work in. And that I think is so important. Gives me pleasure, and of course, the fact that one enjoys it only adds to it. And you're constantly thinking of new trips, new areas, new regions, new people to work with, because the industry has been changing. So it's that is what really still drives me.
It's very cool because it's a lot of this stuff is about the humans, right? The mountains are beautiful, but without the humans involved, both the humans that come visit, the humans that move the camps, the humans that live in the community, adventure tourism without human connection is like, I personally can't get my head around it. I mean, are there things you could go out and do on your own? Probably. I personally I wouldn't enjoy it as much. I mean, I've seen some amazing places, but without the people that were there, I just be like, man, I'm not, who am I sharing this with? So I get that.
Yes.
I get that completely.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
all right. Well, so tell me about your business. Do you work directly with people? Like if somebody's listening to this and wants to book a trip with you, can they do that directly? Do they need to go through their travel agent, another tour operator? A couple of the folks I've interviewed, we've discussed kind of destination management companies as opposed to direct to consumer. So what does your business model look like, and how can people get in touch with you?
Jason, it's B2C and it's B2B. We work with a lot of our partners overseas. We also have a lot of our fixed departures get a lot of direct business. People can find us on our website and connect and join trips. We do a lot of customization. So it's both ways. We white label a lot of trips. We customize a lot, and people can get in touch with us directly or through the agent.
Okay, wonderful. And what's the average length of trip? I know that there's a lot of variables, but like if somebody's listening to this thinking, oh, maybe we should go to the Himalayas, is this a week-long trip? Is this a 2 weeks, a month? What does it typically look like?
So our lodge-based trips are typically between 3 to 6 days, where you can do adventures, yoga, meditation. We're in the valley of the Ganga near Rishikesh, the home of yoga, in the world. And our treks could be anything from 7 to 12 days, depending on the altitude and the degree of difficulty. And remote river expeditions up to 10 to 12 days.
Okay. And on the remote river expeditions and the trekking, are you able to accommodate, I guess I would say teenagers? What's the youngest you can accommodate on those typically?
So 14 on the river trips, and on treks, ability based. We had a couple of 6-year-olds on a hike a couple of months
ago
in the summer, with their parents. So again, ability driven on treks, but a minimum age of 14 on anything that is whitewater.
Okay, and which months are we generally shooting for?
So India, has a very unique advantage over a lot of other places because we have the Trans-Himalayan range. So we can actually operate 12 months of the year because in the peak monsoon months of, late June till mid-September, we are operating in the Trans-Himalayan region of Ladakh and Spiti and Kashmir. So, there's no rainfall there. There's our rain shadow areas. And so we move base, we move operations. So you can actually ostensibly trek around the year in India, and you can run rivers around the year. So it's adventures year-round in the Indian Himalaya.
Very cool. Well, I'm happy to ask you that question because I was not aware of that. So I guess somebody doesn't need to decide when we're going. It's just, okay, you've got some time. They can just reach out to you and say, hey, I've got vacation this month. What should we do? And you've got some great people on your team, I know, and you guys have a great reputation. I've spoken with several people that have mentioned your operation and in very high regard. So I really am honored to have you here today. Is there anything else that you want to share? Anything that we missed that people need to hear before we go?
No, I mean, the only message is, travel safe, travel well, and, set your expectations because, experiences make memories and memories make experiences. So, know what you're doing, know who you're going with, and be safe.
Very good. Words of wisdom. I look forward to meeting you in the Himalayas I'm selfish. I want to meet you in the Himalayas, but if we have an opportunity to meet somewhere else, that's fine too. But India is very high on my list. So I look forward to meeting you in person sometime soon. So thank you so much, Vaibhav Kala, for coming on the show and helping us make this big world feel just a bit smaller. Appreciate you.
Thank you. Namaste.
Namaste. I trust you enjoyed listening to the conversation as much as I enjoyed recording it. If you're enjoying the Big World Made Small podcast, please take a moment to tell the algorithm by subscribing and posting a review so that others can benefit as well. I also invite you to take a quick trip over to bigworldmadesmall.com and join our private adventure travel community to receive new episode notifications, special access to our guest experts, and perhaps even some exclusive partner offers that we haven't discussed on the podcast. I'll publish another episode soon. Until then, keep exploring. It's the best way to make a big world feel just a bit smaller.